Welcome the anointed ones. Nothing unsettles people more than watching someone they left behind arrive somewhere they never believed that person could reach. There is a strange phenomenon in human nature that rarely gets talked about openly. People are comfortable with struggle stories. They understand them, they sympathize with them. But the moment the person who struggled quietly wins, especially without help, applause, or permission, the atmosphere changes. Suddenly, the room gets a little quieter. Not because people hate success. That's the convenient explanation. The deeper truth is far more uncomfortable. Success becomes unsettling when it comes from someone who wasn't expected to make it. Psychologists have long observed something called status expectation bias. It's a simple idea. People unconsciously predict where others belong in life. They form silent rankings in their minds about who will rise, who will remain average, and who will struggle indefinitely. These expectations become so ingrained that they feel like facts rather than opinions. Now here's the twist. When someone breaks that invisible ranking system, when the person people quietly underestimated ends up succeeding alone, the human mind struggles to process it. And that's where the tension begins. Because if you won without the network, without the cheering crowd, without the safety net, then your victory sends a message people cannot easily ignore. It means the rules they believed governed success might not be as rigid as they thought. And that realization can make people deeply uncomfortable. Here's the part nobody likes to admit out loud. Many people are perfectly fine supporting someone as long as that person stays slightly below them. It keeps the social order neat and predictable. But the moment that same person rises beyond expectations, the emotional math changes. Now admiration competes with something else. Comparison. And comparison is a very dangerous emotion for the human ego, because the mind starts doing calculations it never planned to do. How did they do it? When did they pass me? What did they see that I didn't? Sometimes the answers to those questions are simple but brutal. While others were talking, you were working. While others were watching, you were learning. While others were waiting for perfect conditions, you were building in imperfect ones. And when the result finally appears, people react in ways that seem confusing at first. Some congratulate you with tight smiles. Some suddenly remember they always believed in you. Funny how that memory appears after the victory ceremony. And some become strangely quiet, like someone who just realized the chessboard changed while they weren't paying attention. A little humor makes it even clearer. Human beings can watch someone struggle for 10 years and feel comfortable. But let that same person win in year 11 and suddenly people start acting like detectives investigating a financial crime scene. Wait, how did this happen? Something doesn't add up. But the truth is simple. You kept going. And what makes your victory different? What makes it powerful enough to disturb the emotional balance around you is that you did it alone. No crowd pushing you forward, no system protecting you, no chorus of voices telling you it was possible. Just discipline, stubborn belief, and a mind that refused to stay inside the small box other people quietly built for you. That kind of journey creates a result that doesn't just inspire people. It forces them to reevaluate everything they believed about you, and sometimes everything they believed about themselves. And that is exactly why your victory doesn't just exist. For some people watching from the sidelines, it's eating them alive. Number 1. Your victory destroyed the story they told about you. Long before the result showed up, long before the progress became visible, many people around you had already written a quiet story about how your life would turn out. It wasn't written on paper, but it existed clearly in their minds. In that story, you had limits. In that story, there was a line you were never supposed to cross. Maybe they didn't say it out loud, but they believed it. To them, you were only capable of reaching a certain level, a certain type of life, a certain ceiling. People do this all the time. The human mind likes to categorize others quickly because it makes the world feel predictable. Someone gets labeled as the quiet one, the average one, the one who struggles, the one who needs help. Once those labels stick, most people stop updating the story. They assume the future will simply follow the script they already created. But when you rose without their help, without their support, and without their approval, you didn't just succeed. You shattered the storyline they had been comfortable believing. And that kind of shock does something strange to people. It forces them to face the uncomfortable truth that they misjudged you. Not a little bit, completely. The person they mentally placed in a small corner of life suddenly walked into a much bigger room. The one they assumed would always stay behind quietly stepped far ahead. For many people, admitting that kind of mistake is harder than celebrating your success, so their mind begins trying to protect their ego. Some will rewrite history and suddenly claim they always believed in you. Others will act like your achievement isn't that impressive after all. A few may even look for flaws in what you did, just to make themselves feel better about their original judgment. But deep down, the real issue isn't your success itself. The real issue is that your victory exposed something they never expected to see. The fact that the version of you they carried in their minds was completely wrong. And when someone's mental story about you collapses like that, it doesn't just disappear quietly, it lingers. Because every time they see where you are now, it reminds them that the box they once placed you in was far too small. And realizing that they underestimated you all along can quietly haunt a person far longer than they would ever admit. Number 2, your independence exposed their hidden dependence. There's something deeply unsettling about watching someone succeed without the things most people believe are necessary. Many people grow up thinking progress only happens with a strong support system, constant encouragement, connections, or someone opening doors for them. They believe that, without these things, the road forward becomes nearly impossible, so they structure their lives around that belief. They wait for opportunities to be handed to them, for approval to move forward, for the right people to show up and make things easier. Then someone like you comes along and quietly breaks that pattern. You moved forward without the circle, without the constant reassurance, without the crowd pushing you along. You made decisions alone, faced setbacks alone, and kept going even when nobody was clapping for you. And when that kind of independence eventually leads to success, it exposes something many people would rather not confront. It reveals how much they depend on others to take action in their own lives. For some people, that realization hits harder than your victory itself, because deep down, they start to see the contrast. While they were waiting for the perfect moment, the perfect connection, or the perfect support system, you were simply moving forward with whatever you had. No safety net, no guarantees, just determination and the willingness to figure things out along the way. That difference creates an uncomfortable mirror. Your journey shows that progress is sometimes less about having the right people around you and more about having the courage to move even when those people aren't there. It challenges the quiet belief that success must always come through networks, validation, or approval. And when someone sees that the path they thought required a crowd was actually possible alone, it shakes their confidence in the rules they've been following. Some people respond by respecting your independence. They recognize the strength it takes to build something without leaning on others. But others react differently. Instead of reflecting on their own dependence, they try to minimize your journey or search for hidden help behind your success. Not because they truly believe it, but because accepting your independence would mean admitting something uncomfortable, that the barriers they thought were holding them back may not have been as solid as they believed. Number 3, your solitude became proof that you were stronger than the system around you. Most people are shaped, limited, and defined by the systems they live in. Schools, communities, workplaces, even families quietly set boundaries on who can succeed, how success looks, and how far someone can go. These invisible walls are everywhere, built from expectations, traditions, and the collective assumptions of those around us. They tell people what is realistic and what is out of reach, often without ever needing to speak a word. For most, life is a game of staying within these invisible lines, following rules that make the system feel predictable and safe. Then comes someone like you. You walked alone, without looking for permission, without waiting for approval, without relying on the people, structures, or systems that everyone else counted on. You didn't just move forward, you did it on your own terms. And that kind of independent progress reveals something terrifying to those still inside the system. The rules that felt absolute were never absolute at all. By thriving in solitude, you became a living demonstration that the system isn't the ultimate measure of power or success. Your strength didn't come from the ladder others provided. It came from inside, from a discipline and clarity that couldn't be controlled or predicted. The systems designed to guide or limit people suddenly look fragile when faced with someone who refuses to be contained by them. That's why your success unsettles people. They aren't angry at your victory itself. They're disturbed by what it represents. The idea that someone can rise above expectations, ignore the rules, and still reach heights they believed were unattainable without support. The very system they trusted to measure potential is proven imperfect, and that imperfection reflects their own dependence on it. Your solitude didn't just make you independent, it made you untouchable in ways the system could never account for. While others were busy following paths carved by convention, you created a path entirely of your own, one that the system couldn't predict, influence, or control. And for those still confined within its boundaries, seeing that happen quietly gnaws at them, because it proves that strength and vision do not need permission to exist. Number 4. Your survival forced them to confront their own excuses. Most people carry excuses around like invisible shields, and they protect them fiercely. They explain why they haven't started, why they can't succeed, why the world is unfair, why the timing isn't right, why the opportunities aren't there. These excuses often feel perfectly reasonable because they're built on familiar patterns of thinking, experiences, and fear. They give people the comfort of believing that the reasons they haven't moved forward are real, external, and unavoidable. Then someone like you succeeds, quietly against all odds, without fanfare, and without asking for anyone's help. That success doesn't just shine a light on what you've done. It illuminates what everyone else could have done, but didn't. Your achievements act like a mirror they cannot ignore. Suddenly, the carefully constructed walls of reasons and limitations begin to crumble. They realize that what they called barriers were often just excuses cleverly disguised as truth. It's not that the obstacles weren't real at all. Sometimes they were. But while they became reasons to stop, you turned them into fuel to move forward. You didn't wait for perfect conditions. You didn't wait for others to clear the path. You didn't let doubt or fear dictate your next step. You acted, and because you acted, you succeeded. This kind of success can be infuriating to people who have been holding themselves back. It forces them to confront a truth they've long avoided. Maybe it wasn't the world, the system, or circumstances that stopped them. It was their own unwillingness to push, to risk, to endure when it got hard. And that is a brutal pill to swallow. So instead of looking inward and facing the uncomfortable reality that they've been excusing themselves from their own potential, some people redirect their frustration outward. They criticize your journey, downplay your achievements, or search for some hidden advantage you must have had. not because they truly believe you cheated, but because admitting the truth about themselves is far too painful. Your survival, your persistence, and your triumph expose the fragility of their excuses. It's not a gentle revelation. It's a sharp, undeniable proof that while they were still debating why not me, you were already proving why me. And that truth eats at them quietly, relentlessly, and in ways they'll never fully admit. Number 5. Your isolation built a level of clarity they cannot understand. Walking alone for long stretches of life does something rare. It strips away distractions, removes noise, and forces a kind of mental focus most people never experience. While others surround themselves with chatter, advice, opinions, and validation, someone who moves through life alone is forced to rely on their own judgment, observation, and reasoning. Every decision, every risk, every small success or failure is measured and processed internally. Over time, this builds a level of clarity that is almost impossible to fake. That clarity is dangerous to watch. People who live in constant noise rarely see the subtle patterns of behavior, the invisible currents of opportunity, or the unspoken weaknesses in systems. They rely on consensus, social cues, and conventional wisdom to guide their choices. But someone who spent years isolated learns to see without filters, to calculate without bias, and to understand situations with a precision that comes only from being forced to think independently. When that clarity finally produces results, it unsettles people around you. They can sense it, even if they cannot define it. They notice your ability to act decisively when they are still overthinking. They see the ease with which you navigate obstacles that leave them frustrated. They watch you cut through complexity while they remain entangled in the simplest problems. The most jarring part for them is that this clarity isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself. It manifests in outcomes, in confidence, and in an aura of purpose that is impossible to ignore. The independence that cultivated it makes your success feel unassailable. It forces them to acknowledge that what they assumed required guidance, help, or luck was, in reality, navigable with focus and insight. And that is why isolation can make someone terrifyingly effective without anyone understanding how. Your solitude became a laboratory where your mind learned to see straight when others were still squinting through layers of distraction. You developed a vision that cannot easily be influenced, manipulated, or derailed. For those watching from the sidelines, that kind of clarity is both mesmerizing and maddening, because it proves that the person who appeared alone, quiet, and overlooked was quietly mastering the world while they were busy following the crowd. Number 6, you proved that approval is not a requirement for progress. Most people move through life waiting for someone to give them permission. They wait for approval, recognition, validation, or some form of reassurance that what they're doing is right. They look for signs from bosses, mentors, friends, or society itself before they feel confident enough to take real action. It's a quiet dependency that most people don't even notice. They've built their entire approach to progress around the idea that someone else's opinion is the fuel for their own movement. Then you come along and completely break that pattern. You didn't wait for permission. You didn't wait for a nod of approval or for someone to hand you the key to move forward. You simply acted. You learned, experimented, failed, corrected, and kept going without asking anyone if it was okay. That simple refusal to rely on others' validation is revolutionary in a world where most people have become addicted to it. When your progress becomes visible, it sends a quiet shockwave to those who assumed they needed the crowd, the system, or the approval of others to succeed. They see someone moving forward relentlessly, building, achieving, and thriving without the safety net they thought was essential. and that realization hits them in a way they weren't prepared for. Suddenly, their carefully structured belief that success is conditional on recognition starts to feel flimsy. Your victory proves something powerful. The only permission truly required to move forward is the permission you give yourself. Progress isn't contingent on applause, encouragement, or anyone's belief in you. It's contingent on action, persistence, and the unwillingness to be stopped by the lack of external support. For those who relied on validation to feel safe, this truth is destabilizing. Your independence exposes the quiet dependency they've built into their lives. It's not just that you succeeded, it's that you did it without ever needing them. Your progress becomes a statement, a living proof that reliance on external approval is optional, and watching someone thrive under those conditions challenges their core assumptions, leaving them both in awe and quietly uncomfortable. You didn't just win, you rewrote the rules for anyone who thought they needed permission to move. Number 7. Your discipline was built in silence, while they were distracted. Most people think success happens in big, flashy moments. They assume that the achievements they see are the result of sudden breakthroughs, lucky opportunities, or external help. They rarely notice the countless hours of quiet, unglamorous work that made those moments possible. While others were scrolling through social media, debating who said what, or waiting for the right time, you were silently grinding, honing your skills, and sharpening your mind. Discipline is rarely dramatic. It doesn't announce itself. It shows up in the small choices no one is watching, the extra hour spent learning, the repeated practice nobody notices, the sacrifices that go unseen. That's where real strength is built, in the silent spaces between action and recognition. While the world is busy with distractions, those who commit to invisible work accumulate a power that is quiet, relentless, and unshakable. When your results finally surface, people assume it happened overnight. They see the finished product, the polished outcome, the success that seems sudden and effortless. What they don't see is the years of repetition, of focus, of resisting every temptation to take the easy path. They don't see the resilience it took to keep going when no one was applauding. And that gap between perception and reality creates a kind of awe and often envy that quietly eats at them. Your discipline became a weapon they cannot understand because it was invisible. You weren't seeking approval, validation, or acknowledgement. You were building momentum when no one was paying attention, and that momentum eventually became unstoppable. That is why your success can feel so shocking to people. They are only now seeing the result of effort that never needed an audience. The truth is simple and brutal. While others were distracted by noise, you were building a life. You were training your mind, your patience, and your skill in ways that no one else bothered to do. And when the results arrive, it's undeniable. The discipline forged in silence doesn't just produce outcomes, it produces a version of you that can't be ignored, underestimated, or controlled. And for those who watched but never acted, that reality is both inspiring and painfully uncomfortable. Number 8, you became proof that isolation is not always a weakness. Most people grow up thinking being alone is a disadvantage. They equate isolation with rejection, failure, or weakness. Society reinforces this idea at every turn. Success stories are often presented as collaborative efforts, surrounded by teams, mentors, and networks. People are taught to believe that if you don't have a crowd behind you, you're missing something essential. That belief becomes so ingrained that they assume anyone moving alone must be struggling, lost, or falling behind. Then someone like you comes along, quietly walking their path, building, learning, and surviving in solitude. And when that solitary effort turns into success, it challenges one of the deepest assumptions people hold, That connection and external support are prerequisites for achievement. Your life becomes living proof that independence can be more than enough, that being alone can actually be a superpower. Isolation forces a kind of self-reliance most people never develop. When there's no one to guide you, no one to validate your choices, and no one to catch you when you fall, your mind learns to navigate uncertainty on its own. You make decisions based on observation, experience, and instinct. You develop patience, clarity, and resilience that others, surrounded by constant noise and influence, rarely cultivate. The solitude sharpens your perception, strengthens your discipline, and deepens your understanding of people, systems, and life itself. When people finally see the result of your solitary journey, it unsettles them. They are confronted with a truth they didn't expect. Being alone didn't hold you back, it propelled you forward. While they were waiting for the right people, the right moment, or the right opportunity, you were quietly building a foundation strong enough to withstand any storm. Your success becomes undeniable evidence that isolation is not weakness. It's preparation, and that realization quietly gnaws at anyone who ever assumed they needed others to succeed. It forces them to question their dependence, their choices, and the limits they placed on themselves. You didn't just survive your solitude, you thrived in it, and in doing so, you redefined what it means to rise alone. Number 9. Your success revealed who was quietly hoping you would fail. Success has a way of revealing hidden truths, and one of the harshest is how people around you truly feel when you rise. While you were struggling, learning, and grinding in silence, most observers seemed neutral, even supportive. Some smiled, nodded, or gave advice. Others stayed quiet. It all felt normal. But the moment your efforts produced visible results, the mask slipped. Suddenly, the energy in the room changed. The people who pretended to be neutral or indifferent became uneasy. The ones who had quietly doubted you now had no choice but to react. What's unsettling for them is not your success itself. It's the realization that for years they were hoping you wouldn't make it. Maybe it wasn't conscious at first, but deep down, some people were silently counting on your failure. They were comfortable with the story of you struggling or staying within the bounds they imagined for you. Your rise destroyed that story. Every milestone you reached became a reminder that their quiet wish for you to stay small, to falter, or to remain just okay, had failed. This kind of revelation can feel almost contagious. Envy, disbelief, and frustration start bubbling under the surface. People who seemed supportive now show subtle signs of resentment. Compliments are forced, smiles are tight, and conversations change tone. You begin to notice the shift, not because it's dramatic, but because it's unavoidable. Your existence, your progress, becomes a mirror reflecting the quiet hopes and fears of those who never wanted to see you win. And that mirror is brutal. It doesn't lie, it doesn't soften, and it doesn't allow excuses. Your achievements stand there, undeniable, while their hidden expectations of your failure crumble. Your success doesn't just elevate you, it exposes them. It shows who was silently rooting for you to fall, who underestimated your resilience, and who relied on your struggle to feel safe in their own mediocrity. That exposure is sharp, uncomfortable, and unforgettable. Your rise, done on your terms, forces people to confront something they never planned to face, the reality that they were quietly hoping you wouldn't succeed. And there is nothing more unsettling than being confronted with your own misjudgment in plain sight. Number 10. Your growth forced them to rethink their place in the world. When you rise alone, quietly and relentlessly, it doesn't just affect your life. It shakes the invisible structure of everyone around you. People live in a world built on assumptions and expectations. They mentally chart their social hierarchy, their professional map, their understanding of who leads, who follows, and who stays in their lane. For years, they may have believed that they had a clear picture of their place in this world. That picture feels safe because it's predictable. They know where they belong, who outranks them, and who is below them. It's comfortable because it makes life seem orderly. Then someone like you comes along and breaks that structure. You don't just move forward. You leap beyond the expectations everyone placed on you. Suddenly, the map they've relied on no longer fits reality. They assumed they understood the boundaries of your potential, and yet here you are, walking past them in ways they never predicted. That growth forces a quiet, often unspoken reckoning. They begin to reassess everything. Their assumptions about your capabilities, their own abilities, and even the rules they've been following to measure success. This isn't a loud confrontation. It's subtle, creeping, and unnerving. Each milestone you hit becomes evidence that the social order they counted on is malleable, that success isn't as tied to position, privilege, or approval as they once thought. Their comfort zone begins to shrink as they realize that you aren't constrained by the same boundaries. What they thought was fixed is now fluid, and your rise demonstrates that the hierarchy they relied on was never as secure as they believed. Some people respond with admiration, quietly impressed by your determination and skill. Others react with insecurity, envy, or defensiveness, struggling to reconcile their expectations with the new reality. Your success forces them to confront an uncomfortable truth. If you can rise beyond what they thought possible, then perhaps their own place in the world is not as secure as they assumed. Your growth doesn't just elevate you. It destabilizes their perception, reshapes the mental map they relied on, and forces them to face the reality that the world is far bigger and far less predictable than they ever allowed themselves to see. Number 11. You became a mirror they cannot look away from. When you rise alone, your life begins to reflect more than just your achievements. It reflects possibilities, courage, and choices that others quietly denied themselves. People often go through life comparing themselves to others, measuring their success against visible milestones. But when someone close achieves without help, without shortcuts, without waiting for approval, it becomes more than comparison. It becomes a mirror. And mirrors are uncomfortable because they reveal truths people aren't ready to face. Your journey exposes what others avoided. It reveals the risks they didn't take, the effort they postponed, and the opportunities they let slip away. While you were building, learning, and pushing past limits, some were settling for comfort, convincing themselves that circumstances were stronger than willpower. Your results shine a light on the difference between movement and stagnation, between persistence and excuses, between belief and hesitation. That light is not gentle. It forces recognition. Even if they don't want to admit it, they see what could have been theirs if they had acted differently. Being a mirror doesn't make people angry at you. It makes them confront themselves. It triggers feelings they never prepared for: regret, envy, and a silent frustration at their own choices. They might smile, nod, or congratulate you, but deep down, every achievement you reach reminds them of the paths they abandoned, the moments they hesitated, and the potential they left untapped. Your success doesn't just exist in isolation. It interacts with their perception of their own life. That reflection is sharp, unavoidable, and enduring. Unlike competition, which can be ignored, a mirror shows them the reality they've been hiding from themselves. You didn't just achieve, you revealed the gap between action and hesitation, between courage and fear, between choice and excuse. And for those watching, it is impossible to look away. Your life quietly forces them to confront their own inaction while witnessing your forward motion. And that contrast can be both mesmerizing and maddening. In becoming a mirror, you didn't ask permission. You didn't wait for their recognition. You simply moved forward, and in doing so, you exposed a truth about them they could no longer deny. The difference between their life and yours was always in their hands, not in circumstances. Number 12. Your confidence now feels threatening, because it was earned without them. There's a kind of confidence that makes people uneasy, the type that isn't borrowed approval or fake bravado. Most people's confidence depends on others, a nod from authority, praise from peers, or the reassurance that they are doing things the right way. It's fragile because it lives outside them, tied to the reactions and perceptions of others. But the confidence you built is different. You earned it in silence, through struggle, through solitude, and through the relentless grind that no one else witnessed. It didn't need their permission, validation, or approval. That's why it feels threatening. When people see someone moving with that kind of unshakable self-assurance, it's intimidating, even if they try to hide it. They sense that your decisions, your success, and your composure are untouchable by gossip, criticism, or manipulation. You can't be swayed by opinions because your strength didn't come from them in the first place. That independence exposes a truth many aren't ready to accept. They are influenced far more than they realize, while you have trained yourself to act and succeed regardless of external pressures. The threat isn't about what you've done. It's about what your presence reveals. Your confidence highlights the ways others have limited themselves, the ways they've waited for validation instead of taking control. It forces them to compare your self-reliance to their dependency, and that comparison stings in ways they can't fully admit. People can handle brilliance or talent when it exists within the expected rules of the system. But when someone moves confidently outside those rules, without relying on anyone, it unsettles the very foundation they built their sense of order on. That's why watching you succeed without needing them feels dangerous. Your confidence isn't loud or arrogant. It's quiet, deliberate, and rooted in real experience. It's the kind of confidence that cannot be shaken or undermined, and it leaves a mark on everyone observing. They are forced to reckon with the fact that their influence over your journey was never required, and that truth is both humbling and maddening. Your presence doesn't just inspire, it disrupts because it proves that genuine strength doesn't ask for permission, and confidence earned alone cannot be controlled. Number 13. Your rise rewrote. The social map they thought was permanent. People love to believe that the world has a fixed order, that there are invisible rules dictating who leads, who follows, who succeeds, and who stays behind. They quietly assign roles, rank abilities, and place limits on others based on observation, assumptions, and convenience. That invisible map gives them comfort because it makes life predictable. They know their place, they know who they can surpass, and they know who will always remain ahead. But your rise shattered that illusion. When you succeeded alone, without relying on the support, approval, or guidance of others, you didn't just move forward. You disrupted the social order they believed was permanent. Suddenly, the positions they assumed were untouchable became fluid. The hierarchy they depended on to feel secure no longer fit reality. You crossed boundaries they thought were fixed, moved past people who assumed you couldn't, and achieved milestones they assumed were out of reach. Their mental map of the world, the quiet structure that helped them feel safe and in control, was rewritten in real time. That rewriting is subtle but powerful. Every step you take that surpasses expectation forces them to reassess their assumptions about competence, potential, and influence. People who once felt untouchable in their positions suddenly realize their advantage was never as solid as they thought. Your movement exposes the fragility of systems built on perception, assumptions, and control. It shows that status isn't permanent, and success isn't guaranteed by position or privilege. It's earned, and sometimes it's earned in silence while others remain complacent. For those watching, that realization is disorienting. They must confront the uncomfortable truth that the world is more fluid than they believed, that their own perceived security was partly illusion, and that you achieved what they assumed required resources, help, or permission. Your rise doesn't just elevate you, it challenges the foundation of the social environment itself. In doing so, you leave people rethinking not just your place, but their own, and the invisible rules they once trusted no longer feel reliable. Your success rewrites their world in ways they cannot ignore, leaving a quiet but undeniable mark on everyone who assumed they had control over the map. Number 14. The most brutal truth. You didn't need them. The most unsettling reality for the people around you is this simple fact. You didn't need them. Not their approval, not their help, not their guidance, not their recognition. While many rely on networks, influence, and permission to move forward, you proved that real strength doesn't ask for permission. It takes action regardless. Every step you took, every milestone you achieved, was the product of your own decisions, your own discipline, and your own persistence. And that truth is devastating for anyone who believed they were essential to your journey. When people invest themselves in your story, mentally or emotionally, they assume their presence, support, or judgment matters. They assume their influence shapes the outcomes, that your path is somehow tied to them. But by thriving without them, you shattered that illusion. Your life became proof that independence, clarity, and relentless focus can outperform expectations, systems, and even the supposed authority of others. They watched, perhaps hoping you would struggle, perhaps even thinking they had some control over your results, only to realize they were completely irrelevant to the force driving your success. That realization is quiet, but powerful. It doesn't come with shouting or confrontation. It comes in the subtle shock of watching someone they thought needed them rise effortlessly, consistently, and visibly. Your independence highlights the gaps in their own reliance on others. It forces them to confront their quiet assumptions about power, influence, and necessity. They see that while they were busy trying to be needed, you were busy becoming unstoppable, and that is why your victory eats at them. It's not just that you won, it's that you won on your own terms, untethered, self-sufficient, and unapologetically unstoppable. Your journey didn't just succeed, it exposed the fragile truth behind the people who watched it unfold. They assumed you needed them, but the reality is far harsher. You needed only yourself. That truth stings because it undermines the subtle control they thought they had and quietly proves one undeniable fact. Your life, your progress, and your success were never dependent on anyone else, and nothing they could do could change that. Conclusion. When you look at the journey you've walked, the victories you've quietly earned, and the obstacles you've overcome alone, it becomes clear that your story isn't just about success. It's a revelation. Each step you took without help, each challenge you faced without support, each boundary you crossed without permission sent ripples through the world around you. People who once underestimated you, ignored you, or quietly hoped for your failure are now forced to confront truths they never anticipated. Your rise disrupted their assumptions, exposed their reliance on validation, revealed their hidden envy, and forced them to rethink the social and mental maps they believed were permanent. Your independence, your discipline, and your clarity have created a life that doesn't just thrive, it resonates with power. You proved that obstacles don't require permission, that solitude can be a strength, and that the greatest victories are often earned in silence, away from the applause, waiting only for those willing to persist. People watching may feel unsettled, envious, or even frustrated, not because of what you did, but because your journey exposes the limits they've quietly placed on themselves. Every achievement you earn becomes a mirror, reflecting not only your brilliance, but also the paths others refuse to take. This is why your victory is not just a personal milestone, it is a force that challenges, disrupts, and redefines expectations. It proves that success is not about who's watching, who's supporting, or who's approving. It's about courage, consistency, and the relentless refusal to settle for anything less than what you know you can achieve. You didn't just win, you won on your own terms, and in doing so, you showed the world that the only permission you need is your own. If this message resonates with you, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you never miss insights that cut through the noise and reveal the truths most people are too afraid to face. Like this video if it hit hard, comment below with your own experiences of rising alone, and share it with someone who needs to see that success doesn't require permission. Let's keep building a space where real stories, real victories, and real power are celebrated, because your journey deserves to be recognized in its full, unfiltered glory. God bless you.